Hi, my name's Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Archaeology, the new expedition, a 2 to 5 player competitive card drafting and set collection game, because you're going to be buying, selling and trading cards from the central pool and trying to turn them round for the most profit possible. Now, as players, you're following in the footsteps of that guy who uncovered King Tut's tomb and cursed all of his expedition party, and that mentalist whose name escapes me that raided the last Ark of the Covenant and escaped the Doom Temple or something. Except this time it's all about the moolah. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game is to be the player with the most money at the end of the game. Now, setup will vary depending on the player count, so you're always going to need to cross-reference the setting up the game section in the rulebook. But fundamentally, you're going to be taking all the treasure cards that come in the box, except these map cards and any other types of treasures that are removed depending on the player count. You're then going to shuffle them into a deck and deal 4 treasure cards to each player that they'll start the game with, and then deal 5 face-up treasure cards that will form a communal marketplace. You'll then need to randomly select a monument, which will have a number of chambers in that you'll then need to draw cards from the treasure deck into face down piles. So you'll see here we need a pile of 2 cards, 5 and 8 that we've placed here. Each player will then need to start with their own tent card, and then you'll shuffle a number of sandstorm and thief cards into the deck dependent on the player count, and details of that can be found at the bottom of the card. And then all 6 map cards that come with the game will also need to be shuffled into that deck. You're then good to go. So after randomly selecting the first player, each player turn is broken down into 2 phases. The first of which is when you dig for treasure, and this is where you draw the top card of the deck, which this game calls the dig site. Now, one of 3 things can happen at this point. You can either draw a treasure card like this map, and then you immediately place that card in your hand. Now, Captain Obvious would like to state that your hand should be kept secret from your opponents at all times. You could also draw a Sandstorm card, and this is going to be a card that has an effect on all players. So starting with the current player, you're going to decide whether you want the effects of the sandstorm to take place, and if you do, you're going to need to discard half of the cards in your hand rounded down of your choice, and then immediately place those discarded cards in the communal marketplace. However, if you're particularly precious about the cards in your hand, once each game you can use your tent card to negate the effects of the sandstorm. Once you've made your mind up what to do, the player to your left will make the similar choice until everyone has chosen how to deal with that. Now, the player that draws the sandstorm card will also get to dig for treasure again, and hopefully they'll get a treasure that they can place in their hand. Now, the third type of card you're going to draw are these thief cards, and this is where the current player will choose one of their opponents and then randomly take a card from their hand. However, once they've done that, they don't then draw another card, they then proceed to the next phase. The second phase is called Other Actions, and this is where the player can do any or all of these 3 things. The first of which is to trade at the marketplace, and you'll see all treasure cards actually have a trade value in the top left and right hand corner. So fundamentally what you can do is sell cards from your hand, place them in the marketplace and exchange them for a value equal to or less than the value of the cards that you've traded in. So let's just say, for example, player 1 here decides to cash in these 4 trade Pharaoh's Mask card. That will allow them to buy these coin cards that cost 2, because you can see that they've already got coin cards in their hand and they're looking to get more of that set to gain more points, and then use the remaining 2 to buy this Broken Cup card. So you can do this as many times as you want during your turn, and you might want to do that again after you've done the second action you can take, which is to explore a monument, and you can only do this once per turn. But you're going to need map cards, and you'll see that we drew one of these earlier in order to explore monuments. So to explore the chamber with 2 cards, we're going to need to discard 1 map card from our hand, and you'll see then to explore the monuments with 5 and 8 cards, you're going to need to discard 2 and 3 map cards from your hand respectively. So player 1 decides to cash in the 1 card by discarding it and removing it from the game, and then drawing the 2 cards in that pile and placing them in your hand. Now this is why trading at the marketplace can be done any number of times throughout your turn, because the cards you've drawn might give you further value to trade with. The final action a player can take is to sell to the museum, and this is where you're going to refer to the numbers at the bottom of each treasure card, because it will show you if you sell a certain amount of cards you're going to get a certain amount of points at the end of the game. So you'll see that player 1 has accrued 4 coins and is going to sell them to the museum in order to know that they're going to get 20 points at the end of the game. However, once you've sold a particular set of cards to the museum, placing them face up in front of you, you know that you can't add further to that set on future turns. So you'll know you've foregone the opportunity to gain 30 points by adding 1 more coin to that set. Now you can sell any number of cards to the museum on your turn, but once you've done any or all of those actions, you'll then finish your turn and pass to the player to your left. You will rinse and repeat like that until the dig site or deck is completely empty, and at that point each player on their turn will forego the dig the treasure phase and go straight to the other actions, where they can take any or all of those or pass. But if then all players consecutively pass around the table, it will then be up to that player to sell at least 1 of their cards from their hand to the museum. Play will continue like that then until all players have emptied their hand of cards. You'll then tally up the total number of money or points that you've collected from selling collections to the museum, and the player with the most points is then the winner. So that's how this game plays. What did I think of it? So who is this for? Well, it's very much a lightweight game, almost as light as a feather. But this is going to appeal to those that like square set collection games like Rummy and its ilk. Perhaps you like the idea of uncovering treasure, but you just can't bear to get your hands dirty. Then there's probably something here for you. Now you might want to consider this if you liked Port Royal, published by Pegasus Spiel, or Biblios, published by Yellow, although the latter does add some auction and bidding into proceedings. So in terms of gameplay, well, a lightweight game like this really does need to do certain things right to set it aside from its peers, and these 3 things Archaeology does very well. So there can be no wasted mechanics. Any bloat on offer is just going to be so readily apparent and drag down what should be a simple, straightforward and fun gameplay experience. I'll use the word fun because that brings me to number 2. It has to be fun and immediately engaging in terms of getting the game to the table and then appreciating its subtleties, where the joy lies in it almost immediately, and it does that very well as well. And then finally, the reward that you get from playing this 20 to 30 minute game needs to be greater than the effort on offer. Because it's straightforward, it's fairly straightforward in terms of being a set collection game. You've got to know when to buy and sell, but you want to be working towards a nice reward, even if you're not the winner, but just knowing that you've been able to maximise the choices you have during the game will bring that sort of reward. And again, Archaeology does that well. The little bells and whistles that separate this and make this different from just a completely bland, completely simple set collection game, like the Thief and the Sandstorm cards, really do integrate themselves well, and the fact that the number differs depending on the player count makes this a balanced game, no matter if you're playing with 2 players or 5 players. There are also some gameplay variants that reference 2-player games, so anytime a gameplay variants are added into rules, I really do appreciate that. Similarly, the monuments add that little bit of extra replayability here, a bit of theme as well. Uncovering all the chambers in each monument has different conditions, and that just adds to the overall package. So in terms of what I didn't like about it, well, let me just say Archaeology, the new expedition. Why is it the? Why is it not a new expedition? Honestly, when I was doing the intro and saying the name, I kept getting twitches and ticks. A new expedition would have worked better for me. Please learn from this. So in terms of the look and feel and theme of the game, well, it looks good. That artwork on the box is delightful, and the card art is of a decent standard as well. It feels oh so good. The component quality cannot be grumbled about at all, and the theme is kind of lathered on with a lathering instrument. So really just fossils up across the board in that regard. So crap jokes aside, Dice vs Cards are going to give you a final score of 8 out of 10. Now if you're looking for a filler set collection game to round out your collection, then you can't go wrong here. So that's it from me. I'll see you next time.
Can you see anything, Mr. Carter? Yes, wonderful things.